Hi everybody, welcome to my YouTube channel Dr.Sreenivas Medical Concepts and my FB page Dr.Sreenivas Concepts. This is Dr. Sreenivas, neurologist from Rajahmundry, Andhra Pradesh, India. My email is sreeklpm@gmail.com. I am also the medical author of the two books Focus Neurology and Exam Oriented Clinical Neurology. We are continuing with a series of lectures of prime neurology, and there are going to be 50 episodes of prime neurology, and if one listens to all these 50 episodes of prime neurology, one would have acquired a good knowledge of neurology. Right now we are on part 32, prime neurology, cranial nerves and brainstem. So we are going to discuss cranial nerves and brainstem, prime neurology part 32. Introduction. Except for the first and second cranial nerves, the anatomy of cranial nerves is closely linked to the brainstem. There is a useful mnemonic, the rule of 4 of the brainstem, to remember the basic anatomy and the syndromes. What is this rule of 4? Rule of 4 applicable to brainstem. According to the rule of 4, there are 4 cranial nerves in each section, that is midbrain, pons and medulla oblongata. 4 cranial nerves in midbrain and above, that is 1st and 6th above midbrain, 3 and 4th in midbrain. 4 cranial nerves in the pons, that is 5, 6, 7, 8, and 4 cranial nerves in the medulla oblongata, that is 9, 10, 11, 12. So there are 4 cranial nerves in midbrain and above, 4 in pons and 4 in medulla oblongata. So there are totally 12 cranial nerves. The cranial nerves that divide evenly into 12 are placed midline. That is, the cranial nerves which can divide 12 into equal parts are placed medially. For example, if we take midbrain, 3 and 4 nerves, they can divide 12 into equal parts. 12 by 3 is 4 and 12 by 4 is 3. So 3 and 4 cranial nerves are placed medially in the midbrain. Then comes 5, 6, 7, 8. 5, 7 and 8 cannot divide 12 into equal parts. So 5, 7, 8 are placed laterally in the pons. Whereas 6 cranial nerve can divide 12 into 2 equal parts. So 6 cranial nerve is placed medially. When it comes to medulla oblongata, 9, 10, 11, 12 cranial nerves. 9, 10 and 11 cannot divide 12 into equal parts. Whereas 12 can divide 12 into 1 equal parts. So 12th cranial nerve is placed medially. 9, 10, 11 cranial nerves are placed laterally. So cranial nerves that can divide 12 into equal parts, that is 3, 4, 6 and 12. 12 by 3 is 4, 12 by 4 is 3, 12 by 6 is 2, 12 by 12 is 1. So 3, 4, 6, 12 cranial nerves are placed medially. The cranial nerves which cannot divide 12 into equal parts are placed laterally. That is 5, 7, 8 in pons, 9, 10, 11 in medulla oblongata. Yeah. There are 4 tracts which start with the letter M and are placed medially. So M for M. The tracts which start with the letter M are placed medially. What are those tracts? 1 M, medial longitudinal fasciculus, which connects 3rd, 4th, 6th with 8th and which is important for ocular movements. So medial longitudinal fasciculus is placed medially. The motor tract M, motor tract of the upper motor neuron, corticospinal tract is placed medially. M, medial lemniscus, which is concerned with proprioception and vibration, is placed medially. 4. M, motor nuclei of cranial nerves are placed medially. So the 4 systems which start with the letter M are placed medially. M for M, medial longitudinal fasciculus, motor tract of the upper motor neuron, that is corticospinal tract, medial lemniscus, that is proprioception and vibration, and motor nuclei of the cranial nerves. 4 tracts which start with the letter S are placed sideways. S for S. 4 tracts which start with the letter S are placed sideways. S for S. So what are they? Spinothalamic tract, which carries pain and temperature, is placed laterally. Spinocerebellar tract, which starts with the letter S. Sympathetic chain, which starts with the letter S, which is responsible for dilatation and sweating. And S, sensory nuclei of the cranial nerve nuclei, especially 5th. And therefore the sensory tracts, sensory systems which start with the letter S are placed sideways. S for S. Spinothalamic tract, spinocerebellar tract, sympathetic chain and sensory cranial nerve nuclei. For example, if we take lateral medullary syndrome, that is Wallenberg syndrome, only the lateral part of the medulla oblongata is affected. So the tracts which are placed sideways are affected. So tracts which are placed sideways the tracts which start with the letter S are affected. So in lateral medullary syndrome or Wallenberg syndrome, all these 4 tracts which are placed laterally are affected, namely spinothalamic tract, spinocerebellar tract, sympathetic chain and sensory cranial nerve nuclei. Now the organization of the cranial nerves in the brainstem. In the brainstem, the motor neurons derived from the basal plate lie medially and the sensory neurons derived from the alar plate lie laterally. So motor neurons are placed medially and sensory neurons are placed laterally. The cell columns are divided into motor efferent and sensory afferent and into general and special, somatic and visceral cell types. So here you can see the cell columns of the brainstem with the motor nuclei placed medially. So these are all the motor nuclei which are placed medially and the sensory nuclei which are placed laterally. So these are all the sensory nuclei which are placed laterally. So you have general somatic efferent, general somatic efferent, general somatic efferent, general visceral afferent, general visceral efferent, special somatic afferent, special visceral efferent and special visceral afferent. We'll see what these are. So first let's talk about the efferent cell columns in the brainstem. So general somatic efferent. So general somatic efferent cells innervate skeletal muscles derived from myotomes, that is extraocular and tongue muscles. So efferent are motor. So general somatic efferent means the cells which innervate skeletal muscles derived from myotomes, that is extraocular and tongue muscles. Then we have general visceral efferent. General efferent cells innervate the visceral motor or autonomic parasympathetic neurons supplying smooth muscles and glands of the head and neck, the thoracic and abdominal viscera. So general visceral efferent is autonomic. And then we have special visceral efferent. These cells innervate muscles of branchial or pharyngeal arch. So in the efferent systems we have three subtypes: general somatic efferent innervating skeletal muscle, general visceral efferent innervating the parasympathetic neurons, and special efferent neurons innervating muscles of branchial arch. So the motor nuclei of the cranial nerves, we have the oculomotor nerve, the somatic motor efferent, somatic motor, general somatic efferent. It is at the level of the midbrain, superior level of superior colliculus. Trochlear nerve, which is the 4th cranial nerve, somatic motor, that is general somatic efferent, midbrain level of the inferior colliculus. Abducent nerve is the 6th cranial nerve. It is also somatic motor, general somatic efferent at the level of the pons. Then we have hypoglossal, the 12th nerve, the 3, 4, 6, 12th nerve, somatic motor efferent, medulla oblongata. It is the cranial nerve 12th. So these are all the general somatic efferent. So 3, 4, 6, 12 are the general somatic efferent. Now let's talk about the general visceral efferent, that is supplying the autonomic nerves. Edinger-Westphal nuclei, parasympathetic, which is of the 3rd nerve. It's at the level of the midbrain, superior level of the level of the superior colliculus. Superior salivatory, parasympathetic, again general visceral efferent. It is 7th nerve. Inferior salivatory, it is the 9th nerve, again parasympathetic, general visceral efferent, pons. And we have dorsal motor nuclei of the vagus, 10th nerve, which is at the level of the medulla. So general visceral efferent, that is concerned with the parasympathetic are 3rd nerve, 7th nerve, 9th nerve and 10th nerve. Then we have special visceral efferent supplying the muscles derived from the branchial arch, branchiomotor. They are trigeminal motor, facial and ambiguous. So 5th nerve, 7th nerve and 9, 10 and cranial root of 11th nerve. So we have 3 types, as I said earlier: somatic motor or general somatic efferent supplying the muscles of the eye and 12th nerve, and then the general visceral efferent concerned with the parasympathetic, and special visceral efferent concerned with the branchial arch. Likewise, we have sensory nuclei of the cranial nerves. You have the mesencephalic root of the trigeminal nerve. In trigeminal nerve, we have 3 types: mesencephalic root of the trigeminal nerve, principal sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve and nucleus of the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve. Mesencephalic nucleus is concerned with the proprioceptive fibers from all cranial nerve fibers. So it is general somatic afferent, midbrain, trigeminothalamic tract reflex connection. Then we have principal sensory nucleus of trigeminal nerve. It is concerned with the touch and pressure sensation from the head via the cranial nerves 5, 7, 9 and 10. Then the nucleus of the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve, which is concerned with the pain and temperature sensation from the head and neck. So basically we have three subtypes in the trigeminal nerve. Mesencephalic root of trigeminal nerve concerned with proprioceptive fibers. Principal sensory nucleus of trigeminal nerve concerned with touch and pressure sensation. Nucleus of the spinal tract of trigeminal nerve concerned with pain and temperature, which runs from pons extending through medulla to upper cervical cord. Then we have the special visceral. These are the general somatic afferent. Now we have the special visceral afferent. The nucleus of solitary tract or rostral portion, gustatory nucleus. Taste sensations from cranial nerve 7, 9 and 10. So taste is from the cranial nerve 7, 9 and 10. The efferent is central tegmental tract. Then we have the visceral afferent. Nucleus of the solitary tract and caudal portion. General visceral sensations via the 9th and 10th. Then we have special sensory afferent, that is cochlear nucleus and the vestibular nucleus. Cochlear nucleus is concerned with auditory and vestibular nucleus is concerned with the vestibular fibers and for balance, vestibulospinal, vestibulocerebellar tract. So basically again here if we take sensory nuclei, there are three types. One, let's talk about the trigeminal nerve, which has got the proprioceptive, which has got the touch and pain sensation, the principal sensory nucleus of the trigeminal nerve and the pain and temperature from the nucleus of the spinal tract. Then we have the visceral afferent, which can be of taste going for the 7th, 9th and 10th, and visceral afferent from the sensations of the stomach and other systems, which is from the 9th and 10th. Then we have special sensory afferent, which is concerned with hearing, cochlear and vestibular for balance. How do the cranial nerves come out? The cranial nerves are present in the brain. They have to come out through the skull. So the skull should have foramina so that the cranial nerves can come out of the skull bone and supply all the structures. So how do the cranial nerves come out of the brain? Through the foramen of the skull. So there are various foramina through which these cranial nerves come. So what are the foramen and what are the contents or the cranial nerves through which they emerge? So if we take first the cribriform plate, the olfactory nerve emerges. The foramen optic canal, you have the optic nerve and ophthalmic artery. So this is the optic canal. This is the cribriform plate of the ethmoid bone. You have the olfactory nerve. Then we have the superior orbital fissure, that is the 3rd, 4th, 6th ophthalmic, 5th, first division, and the superior ophthalmic vein. Then we have the foramen rotundum, where you have the 2nd division of the trigeminal nerve, that is the maxillary coming up. Then you have the foramen spinosum, where the middle meningeal artery comes out, and this is very liable, especially for head injury. This artery is liable to get ruptured. Then we have the foramen ovale, where the 3rd division of the mandibular nerve comes, and then we have the internal auditory meatus, through which the 7th, 8th and internal auditory come up, and then we have the jugular foramen, through which the 9th, 10th, 11th and internal jugular vein comes, and then we have the hypoglossal canal, through which the 12th nerve comes, and then we have the carotid canal, through which the carotid artery comes. So now let's talk about the various sections: midbrain, superior collicular level, midbrain, inferior collicular level, pons and medulla oblongata. Very, very important to localize the cranial nerve lesion and other structures also. So the midbrain at the superior collicular level basically shows the third nerve, the red nucleus, and the fibers of the third nerve nucleus as they exit through the interpeduncular fossa. So third nerve is at the level of the superior colliculus, and the 4th nerve is at the level of the inferior colliculus. So if you see the section of the midbrain, this is the cerebral aqueduct. You have the oculomotor nerve, third nerve here. The medial longitudinal fasciculus which connects 3rd, 4th and 6th cranial nerves are here. This is the medial geniculate body. This is the dentatorubro-thalamic tract. This is the red nucleus, very important. The dentatorubro-thalamic tract is the tract which carries sensations from the cerebellum, dentate nucleus, red nucleus and thalamus. The substantia nigra, the pars reticularis, pars compacta, which plays a very important role in Parkinson's disease. And then we have the 3rd nerve nucleus coming up and emerging out medially. So here you see this is the periaqueduct, this is the cerebral aqueduct, this is the periaqueduct gray matter. So this is the superior colliculus. As I said, the tracts which start with the letter S are placed sideways, so spinal thalamic tract. This is the medial lemniscus, this is the paratotemporopontine tract, this is the interpeduncular fossa, this is the crus cerebri, cerebral peduncle, this is the corticospinal tract, corticobulbar tract and the frontopontine tract. Now let's talk about the midbrain at the inferior collicular level. Midbrain at the inferior collicular level showing the decussation of the superior cerebellar peduncle, the medial longitudinal fasciculus and the fibers of the 4th nerve as they exit through the tectum. As I said, the 3rd nerve is at the level of the superior colliculus and the 4th nerve is at the level of the inferior colliculus. So here you can see this is the decussation of the 4th nerve. 4th nerve goes and winds around and goes posteriorly. It crosses and goes posteriorly. It crosses over to the opposite side. So this is, you can see the decussation of the 4th cranial nerve. So this is the periaqueductal gray matter. This is the cerebral aqueduct. This is the medial longitudinal fasciculus. This is the medial lemniscus. This is the substantia nigra. As I said, it's concerned with Parkinson's disease. Pars reticulata, pars compacta. This is the decussation of the superior cerebellar fibers. The superior cerebellar fibers go to the midbrain at the level of the inferior colliculus. So this is the cerebral aqueduct, lateral spinothalamic tract. This is the trochlear nerve. This is a trochlear nucleus. The trochlear nerve crosses to the opposite side like this. And you have the paratotemporopontine fibers. Again, cerebral peduncle, crus cerebri, corticospinal tract, corticobulbar tract and frontopontine tract. Now let's talk about the pons. The mid pons showing the cavity of the 4th ventricle, trigeminal nucleus, medial longitudinal fasciculus, transverse pontine fibers and cerebellar peduncle. So this is the cerebellar vermis. This is the 4th ventricle. You can see this is the 4th ventricle. So you have the medial longitudinal fasciculus connecting the 3rd, 4th, 6th with 8th here. Then basically you have the trigeminal nerve nucleus. Again as I said, there are 3 parts. One is the motor nucleus. So you can see the motor nucleus coming like this. Then you have the principal sensory nucleus. This is the lateral spinothalamic tract. This is the medial lemniscus. This is the corticospinal tract. So here the cerebellar vermis. This is the superior cerebellar peduncle. This is the 4th ventricle. This is the middle cerebellar peduncle. This is the sensory root of the trigeminal nerve. This is the motor root of the trigeminal nerve. These are transverse pontine fibers. There are extensive pontine fibers. You have the frontopontocerebellar tract going here. So the pons basically has got a lot of transverse pontine fibers. Now we'll talk about the medulla oblongata. The medulla at the mid-olivary level showing the pyramids, the decussation of the corticospinal tract, the olives, the hypoglossal and the ambiguous nuclei, the medial lemniscus, the medial longitudinal fasciculus and the spinal tract of the trigeminal nerve. So this is the 4th ventricle in the medulla oblongata. This is the medial longitudinal fasciculus. This is the dorsal motor nuclei of the 10th nerve. This is the 12th nerve. So 12th nerve is placed medially, whereas 9, 10 and 11 are placed laterally. So you can see the 10th nerve is placed laterally, whereas 12th nerve is placed medially. So this is the 10th cranial nerve emerging from the 10th cranial nerve nuclei. This is the nucleus ambiguus, which contains the cranial nerve 9, 10 and 11. This is the nucleus ambiguus. This is the medial lemniscus. And this is the inferior olivary nucleus. This one is the inferior olivary nucleus. and then you can see the 12th nerve nuclei which is placed medially, coming out medially here, 12th nerve. These are the corticospinal tract, pyramidal tracts. So here on the other side, if you see, this is the inferior vestibular nucleus, 8th nerve. This is the medial vestibular nucleus. This is the inferior cerebellar peduncle. The trigeminal nerve nucleus has got the pain tracts also. You have the spinal trigeminal tract here, the spinal trigeminal nucleus. This is the ventral spinocerebellar tract, and this is the spinal lemniscus. So this is the cross section of the medulla oblongata. So the major and ascending and descending long tracts of the spinal cord of the brainstem. What you need to know is that ascending tracts are concerned with the sensory and the motor tracts are concerned with the motor. So basically the ascending tracts, we have the medial lemniscus, that is the posterior column. You have the lateral spinothalamic tract which carries the pain and temperature sensation. You have the lateral nucleus which is concerned with the auditory, and then we have the medial longitudinal fasciculus which connects 3rd, 4th, 6th with 8th nerves. When you talk about the descending tracts, we have the corticobulbar tracts connecting with the cranial nerve nuclei, corticospinal tract connecting to the spinal cord, rubrospinal tract from the red nucleus to the spinal cord, and the medial longitudinal fasciculus which connects 3rd, 4th, 6th with 8th reticular formation in the spinal cord, and the central tegmental tract. Origin is red nucleus and the destination is the inferior collibrary nucleus. So basically you have the medial limb ascending tracts. The medial lemniscus posterior column, origin is nucleus gracilis and cuneatus. This is the ventral posterior nucleus of the thalamus. Lateral spinothalamic tract is concerned with the pain and temperature. Lateral lemniscus is concerned with the auditory cochlear nuclei to the inferior colliculus. Medial longitudinal fasciculus, PPRF 6th nerve nucleus, the 3rd nerve nucleus. Likewise, you have descending tracts, corticobulbar motor cortex to the cranial nerve nucleus, corticospinal motor cortex to the spinal cord, rubrospinal red nucleus to the spinal cord, medial longitudinal fasciculus, reticular formation to the spinal cord, and central tegmental tract, red nucleus to the inferior olivary nucleus. So these are the ascending and the descending tracts. Finally, we will talk about the decussation of the corticospinal tract. It is at the level of the medulla oblongata. The arm fibers cross above, and the leg fibers cross caudally below. So here it's a very peculiar situation where you can have cruciate or crossed paralysis. Imagine there's a lesion here. What happens? The leg fiber is affected on this fiber, whereas the arm fibers is affected this side. So one side arm, the other side leg. So this you call as cruciate hemiplegia. So here all kinds of combinations can occur. If there's a lesion here, there will be bibrachial weakness. That means only upper limbs get affected, only arms get affected. If there's a lesion here, they'll have crural paresis. That means only leg fibers get affected. If there is a lesion here, crossed leg and uncrossed arm get affected. The arm one side and leg the other side. If there's a lesion here again, one side leg, the other side arm gets affected. So various combinations can be present in this particular situation. So at the decussation of the pyramids in the lower medulla, the arms lie medial to the leg fibers. Arm fibers decussate first and comes to lie in the medial portion of the lateral corticospinal tract in the upper cervical spinal cord. Leg fibers decussate more caudally and come to lie in the lateral portion of the lateral corticospinal tract. The syndrome of pyramidal decussation, cruciate or cross paralysis, is spastic weakness of one arm and the contralateral leg because of lesion at the decussation. So this is cruciate hemiplegia. So these are the wonderful concepts of the brainstem. The other important concepts of clinical neurology, I put it in a book called Exam Oriented Clinical Neurology, written by me, Dr.Sreenivas, published by White Army. This book will be very useful for students appearing for clinical neurology exams. If interested, this book could be purchased. The other book I wrote is Focused Neurology, contain all the theoretical elements of neurology. This book will be very useful for students appearing for Viva, OC and practicals. This book is written by me, Dr. Sreenivas. This book is available online from all leading booksellers including Amazon. So if interested, this book could be purchased online. So if you are interested and if you liked all these concepts, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Dr. Sreenivas Medical Concepts, which is India's leading neurology educational YouTube channel, and my B page.